Welcome back to the Leading Yourself podcast. Today is extra special. I know I say this often, but it happens that today I'm sitting down with a friend and colleague from my day job. You probably have heard me talk about the power of inner work and transformation. Well, my guest today has literally written a book about this. His book is called Breaking from the Chains of the Past. And let me tell you, that is a powerful, honest, and inspiring read. I can't wait for this book to be out in the world and available for others to read. And I have the honor to sit down with Joey today to talk about his work, his thoughts around this inner work, and his work around breaking from the chains of the past. Welcome, Joey. I'm so excited for you to be here.
Thank you so much, Carolina. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for welcoming on your podcast.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to have, like we always do, a great conversation. And that's how I always like this podcast to feel like a couple of friends sitting down, enjoying a good cup of coffee, and just chatting around personal development topics. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves, those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. So maybe we should start by you introducing yourself so our listeners know a little bit about who you are and why you're here today.
Yeah. So, a little bit about me. I work with Carolina. I'm an executive, been in HR for over 25 plus years. But outside of that, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a speaker, now an author, and I'm also a coach. And I just love helping and giving back to people and really taking my experiences and what I have learned through my coach and through my life experiences to really go and give back to people. And so that's a little bit about me, and excited to be here and talk a little bit more about my book, but more about what we can do to really get better every single day, and how we can really reach our full potential.
Yeah. And you probably can already tell that Joey and I had a lot of things in common. And that's why we always enjoy to connect and talk about all the things that we're learning, all the things that we're seeing, all the podcasts that we share on have you listened to this one or that one. So I'm really excited about this. So you wrote a book, which is something that very few people do. And having gone through that experience, I know is such an enriching experience, but it also takes a lot of courage. And there's always this like either spark or turning point that made you make that decision of, I have to write this book. So, can you share what motivated you, what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, I mean, this was always on, I don't want to say my bucket list, but something that I wanted to do in my life. And, came to last summer and I was just like, you know, I felt like it was divinity that spoke to me. And, this idea popped in my head, like, we create our future based on our past, if unless we really, really face it and do a lot of hard work. And so that just really resonated with me. And then from there, put the time and effort and block the time on the weekends to really say, okay, I'm going to write one chapter of the book, each weekend and until I finish it. And, that's what really inspired me. I mean, I probably had this goal for over 15 years, and, I put a lot of goals that I want to achieve in my life. And I just think it just, you have to be in that season. And, one day on my walk, it just popped into my mind. I'm like, a lot of things that I'm facing in my life, or when I'm working with other people, whether they're, my clients or people inside our business, they're always going back to their past, living in shame and guilt and fear and self-limiting beliefs. And procrastination in it, and then it just resonated with me, like, oh my god, like I really need to write this book. And the way, I wrote this book is almost two books in one. It starts off with like, how do we create our future based on our past, and then in the second, part of the book is in part two is like what you can do to change that in order to create the future that you really want and reach our full potential.
That resonates a lot because you know as well that I am an inspiring author, and I self-published a book a couple of years ago. That was an attempt of, I think, using your language, breaking with the chains of my past, meaning I always had this limiting belief that I couldn't write a book in English, being English my second language. And the book that I wrote, which is not the book that in my mind is the book that I want to write, like my life's work, it was a book to prove to myself that I could do it, to break through that limiting belief. So I'm so excited for the conversation. You kind of answer this, but if you had to sum up the book in just one sentence, maybe someone is scrolling through a bookstore or they're listening to us and they're like, I don't know if this book is for me. Like, how would you like summarize in one sentence what this book is about?
Yeah, to me, it's this, if you're facing something in your life that, you consistently act with the same habits or the thought processes, or it keeps creeping up, this book, will help you to break that, to change that narrative, and help you, give a system that relates to high standards and habits, and discipline towards, creating what you really, really want. So it could be, you're living in some type of shame and guilt of something, of a decision that you made in your past. It could be a setback that you had in your life. It could be, this limiting belief or this fear that, I'm not good enough to write this book, or I'm not good enough to start this podcast, or I'm not good enough to get into this role. It's for all walks of life. It's for anybody that, is dealing with something, and we're all dealing with something. Is how do you go back and you break that and face that and understand why has that happened to you and what you can do to replace that. I often say that we're creatures of habit, and the only way to replace a habit is to replace it with another. So if you're not doing the right things on a daily basis, you're not focusing your attention on the right habits, the only way to do that is to break that. And a lot of people rely on like motivation and inspiration, but those are like this feelings that we get. You need a system. And so this book talks about a system. And right now I'm also creating an 8-week transformational course around how you can break the chains, and have a method around that. And it's really about, facing this story. We tell ourselves a story that's not really, really, really true. And with that, we can't dream big. We end up dreaming small, and then on top of that, we don't focus our attention on the right things. We're focusing our attention on the wrong things in this narrative, in this story that's really keeping us recreating the future based on our past.
I always say we play this story in our minds, we tell this story, we have this inner dialogue, and we repeat it so many times that we end up believing that is the truth. And not necessarily is the truth, is a story that we have planted into our own brains, right? Curious, you mentioned one thing that inspired you to write this book is people that you've helped, whether mentoring, coaching, in work environments, conversations that they were leaving in the past. And in using the title, the word change. So in your book, you describe some of what these changes are, but in your experience and through the people that you've helped, what are the things from our past that weighed us down? Can you expand a little bit of some examples? What are some of the most common stories that people tell themselves that hold them back? What are some of those chains and how they might look like in real life?
Yeah, it could be, I'm not good enough because of my upbringing. A lot of it stems from our childhood. It could be a traumatic event, like a divorce, a death, where we don't believe that we're good enough to accomplish something, or we're scared to go and do that. We also have limiting beliefs where people are scared to, achieve something, and that, they could create something that's so big that they're scared of actually being that person. It could be, the sabotage patterns that we tell ourselves, like to make ourselves feel good. So one of the things for me, and I speak openly constantly in my content and when I'm speaking with my clients and with anybody who I'm mentoring, is that I overeat. And one of the reasons why I overeat is that when I'm really 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 stressed, it takes me back to my childhood with my family and ordering pizza, and then I feel good, and then I eat something that I shouldn't eat, or I do it late at night when I don't have that motivation because I don't have the system. And I had to really break that to change on how my mind would work. And so I would feel good in the moment when I would be eating whatever I would be eating, and then I would feel shame and guilt. Another thing is that I talked about divorce. Like when I went through my divorce, it's like, how am I going to be a good single parent, or how am I going to co-parent, and then living in shame and guilt, and like, what have I done for my kid to my kids? It could be numerous things. There people have gone down a path where they've gone substance abuse, or they've gotten in trouble with the law, and then they don't feel like they can recreate themselves. But I can tell you, everybody grows through pain, and it's really like honoring that pain. But you have to want to do the work. It's not just saying you want to do the work, it's actually taking the action around that. And a lot of people won't take the action. They are where they're at, even with their health. Like it's staying consistent. And I always say, like, you need to have this system, you need to have this habits, and you need to have the standard. You need to do it on a consistent basis, because to me, discipline is self-love, right? Especially when you don't want to do it, and when you're having a test day. Like, how many times do me and you converse and like we're having a test week because so many things are being thrown at us, or something doesn't go according to plan? That's when you grow the most. Like, you retrain your mind on how to deal with difficult situations. So you got to run to that pain, and then once you do that, it's really about having the consistent habits over a period of time, to get to the end goal. So a lot of it has to do with fear, upbringing, traumatic event that's happened. Maybe somebody's lost a parent. Maybe they've lost a loved one. It's around a lot of painful situations that they've put themselves into, and then they've sabotaged themselves, whether it would be substances, or not feeling that they're good enough, or overeating and their health, and then it just continues to snowball. And then 5-10 years go by, and then you're never forward to where you really are, right? To where you want to be, and to really reach your full potential. So you always got, like, we have one life. And so in the book, I talk about memento mori, which is something from the Stoics. And I know it may sound morbid, but like, we only got one life and we're going to die. So what are we putting our attention to today, and how are we focusing on our actions and our habits to really reach our full potential?
Well, so much packed in just what you said, right? I think a few things that really resonate with me and very aligned with the way I see the world. One is, it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. When you have these traumatic events, how you react to them can determine whether it's that factor that changes the trajectory of your life, or you get looped into the self-fulfilling prophecy of, you create a story, and then you're always looking around you for evidence to validate that story. I'm not good enough, so I'm always looking for evidence that I'm not good enough, instead of how you react to it. And it can be, okay, this happened, so now this is my motivation to change. And I also agreed, something resonated with you, is discipline. And I know you and I talked about this all the time. Is one of our favorite things to talk about, habits and discipline and systems. But I do think that motivation also plays an important role, because motivation comes from motive. And these events can give you the motive, the why, because it's when the enthusiasm of what we call motivation doesn't show up, because it doesn't every day, and you can't control when are you going to wake up and motivation is going to show up or not. You can always rely on your why, and if your why is big enough and you have a vision for that compelling future, that helps you get into the building the discipline and building the systems that will enable that why to come to life. So that really resonates with me. And I want to go a little bit deeper into this topic of creating systems. Because a lot of people might be listening and saying, okay, all of that makes sense. in theory, but it's easier said than done. Like I've tried so many times to build habits only to find myself disappointed because it's like New Year resolutions, right? You start the year with all of these energy, all this enthusiasm. I'm going to work out. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to lose 15 pounds. And then February comes and that subscription to the gym that you purchased when you were in the peak state, you haven't ever used and you're back to your old habits. So what is a way of starting to create these systems to help you break from these chains?
So yeah, I would say you got to really get really deep of like what is holding you back. And so it could be multiple things and you can't fix them all at once. So I would pick one at a time. And one of the things I like to do with the people that I'm dealing with is like, okay, write down 3 to 5 things that's holding you back. And the one that's standing out of the page the most, the one that's really resonating with you, that's the one you got to go really, really deep on, right? And so, yeah, at the start of the year, people are like, yeah, I'm going to get fit. And, they go and they get their membership, but they're still creating the same story that they had in their past. Their identity hasn't changed. And so the only way for you to build a system is you need to be a new person. You need to act and think and feel as if you're this new person. And it all starts with the thoughts in your mind because, we become what we think about. It's the strangest secret in the world by Earl Nightingale, right? And so I often say that our mind is like a farmer's field. Whatever you plant into it, it will continue to grow. And so we continue to plant the narrative that like, I'm not healthy or I can't be healthy. So instead of saying that, it's like, what if this does work? What if I put the right habits? And so the other thing too is that we want everything now. And, it's about consistent, repeated, great habits and discipline. And so, yes, I agree with the motive, but then when you don't have the motive, it's the discipline and the self-love of the new identity of what you're really trying to create. So if we look at health, how does somebody that, gets this membership, take a step back and say, okay, so what's the 3 things that I need to do in order to get to where I need to be? Number 1, I need to eat the right foods. So you need to do your research on what you're going to eat. How are you going to track that on a daily basis? And then what are you doing from a fitness standpoint? How are you going to get yourself moving? And so when you are not moving and that day happens where you're like, I just want to hit the snooze button or I don't want to work out today when I'm tired, that is the day that it's going to really recreate your identity. You need to work out that day or you need to eat healthy that day. You cannot succumb to that inner desire because that's what's holding you back. That's that narrative that you continue to tell yourself. But it starts with that vision because if you don't have a vision, you create the same past as you did before. So if I'm going to act like this person, I need to act and think and feel. And so one of the things that I do with a lot of people that I try to help out is that you got to start to visualize, right? We have poverty of imagination and we think really, really, really small. So case in point, I couldn't do a pull-up 3 years ago. Okay. I can now do 5+ pull-ups. It took me, 3 years to get to the point of where I'm going. I just bought new heavier weights. The reason why I did that, I had people in the household say like, why are you buying heavier weights? And it's not about me, my ego. It's because I need to continue to push myself to get to the next level. And I always say, once you get to the next level, there's a new devil and your sabotage pattern will come in.
Hey friend, quick pause because I've got something really exciting to share with you. Thrive is back. That's right. Thrive 2025 is happening this September 8th through the 12th, and you're officially invited. If you've been craving to boost your clarity, confidence, and energy to finish the year strong, this is your moment. Thrive started as a way to celebrate my birthday during the pandemic, and now it's become a tradition. 5 days of powerful conversations, inspirations, and real tools to help you elevate every area of your life. That's our theme this year, Elevate, because you're not here to play small. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers, and yes, I'll be teaching too, and you can join for just $1. Yes, $1 gives you live access to the 5 days. And we have other ticket options with replays and workbooks and VIP perks. So head to the link on the description of this podcast episode to grab your spot before it fills up. I can't wait to see you at Thrive 2025.
Now, how have I gotten through all this? It's because I have a coach. I feel like everybody should have a coach. Coaches have coaches. Everybody, deals with this. You look at Michael Jordan, you look at Tiger Woods, you look at any successful person, actor, successful person, they have a coach. And you need to have somebody that's going to try to help you hold accountable, but that you can, dive into the sabotage pattern. My sabotage pattern comes up and shows up in so many ways, but it's because I'm conscious and I'm aware to it. So you got to start with this vision, and then, you got to think and act and feel as if you are this different person. So how does this person that's healthy act? How does this person act that's a coach? How does this person act if you want to get this job? Like, what's the work that you're going to do? And at the same time, I think we want it all now. And so you got to build that bridge that, we overestimate what we can do in the short term, and we underestimate what we can do in the long term. And that's why the consistency of the habits and the standards really, really is so important. So we really got to break that down. So depending on what it is that steps out of you and jumps out of you at the page, on the page, when you write down what chain it is, you got to really go really, really deep and say, like, why do I feel like that? How do I recreate this? What are the habits? How do I raise my standard? And continue to do that. And I can tell you when you're on the right path, when the people around you, okay, say to you, like, are you crazy for doing this? Or like, you are so different. You're on the right path. And when you're doing the hard work too, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose family. You're going to lose friends. Okay. It's lonely to go through this. And that's why you need to go out and find your people around you that think like that can help you and raise you to that high standard.
Again, so much packed in what you said, but I can't agree more. I think there's 3 levels of change. One is you set goals and you push yourself to accomplish the goals. The second level is you create the systems to support you in developing that, the habits, the rituals. But the ultimate level of change is your identity. Who do I need to become? And I think even when we set goals, you mentioned we play small. And I think the reason for that is because we set goals based on our current identity, not our potential. But we do it based on what we know now, the skills we know we have now, the limitations we believe we have now. And we don't think and set goals based on our future self and what our potential is. And I think out there, I hear a lot of people talk about you just need to flip your limiting beliefs. That never worked for me. But what I think works, at least for me, is reframe them as affirmations on who I am becoming. For example, if I say, I'm not good at doing this, I can reframe it as I am learning, and every experience is helping me become that person who is capable of doing it. So I'm not telling myself a lie, because a lot of times what people do is, if my limiting beliefs is if I'm not good enough, I just need to keep repeating myself like a mantra, right? I'm good enough, I'm good enough, I'm good enough. And your brain catches that lie. It's like, what are you saying? No, we're not. But if you frame that as the person you are becoming, or you just add a yet at the end of those limiting beliefs, that helps you start to grow into this new identity, this new version of you that now is capable of doing all of those things. And I think your habits, your rituals, your systems is how you get there. But in order to define what are the right mix of habits, you need to have clarity as to what is that person that you want to become and how is that person showing up. If I want to be fit, if I want to be 15 pounds lighter, what does that version of me that is 15 pounds lighter do that I'm not doing today? How is her day look like? At what time is she waking up? What is she eating? What kind of movement is she doing? How frequently? All of those things that help you define, okay, if I want to become her, these are the habits I need to build. I need to start showing up today as her with what I'm capable of doing today.
I agree, and that's the act, think, and feel, and that's the visual part where you have to picture yourself, um, like you're watching a movie of yourself, right? I was dealing with somebody the other day, and they're like, how do I do this? I'm like, you got to start with visualization, like the thoughts that you put into your mind. And so, you said something that's really critical. You got to start with your vision and your goals, but you have to have clarity. I often say this, like, if you don't know where you're starting and where you're going, you're like a plane. If a plane takes off and it's 2 degrees off, it's not going to end at the right destination. And so you have to be really clear on who you want to be. And then, I love what you talked about. It's the act and think and feel. Like, how does this person act? How does this person feel? How does this person eat? What's the systems and the responsibilities? And like, goals are very, very, very important. But I love, James Clear quote. As you know, I love quotes. It's like, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system. So, like, you have to get clear on where you're going. You have to have that vision. You have to write down the goal, but then you need that system that's going to keep you on track towards where you need to go. And so, how does this fit executive that's a mom that travels all over the place, that wants to write a book, that has a podcast? How does this person act and think and feel on a consistent basis? And when you don't, how do you recognize that to snap yourself back on? So, like, perfect example, right? Go out, just came back from vacation, ate some things that I didn't, I normally don't eat. But, the next day, I was eating the proper foods in the morning, and then making sure that I was, walking, and making sure that, I worked out 4 times when I was on vacation. And it's because that's my new identity. I'm that person that will, maybe go eat a pizza, but then the next morning, I'm having my eggs and my egg whites, and I'm making sure that I'm getting enough protein, and then I'm having my electrolytes, and I'm having my vitamin stack, and then, I'm going for a walk, and then I'm working out, and then I'm enjoying myself too. And so
And
it's
you're
really
not,
about,
sorry to interrupt you, Joy, and you're not doing it as a way of punishing yourself because you ate the pizza, but you're doing it as a way of what is the next action of integrity that
yes,
pulls me back to my true identity, or this identity that I'm working to build on. Because I think a lot of people do what you're describing, but it's coming out of a place of punishment and correction. And this is not about looking back and say I'm going to punish myself, or I got off track and getting to this downward spiral, but it's more of what is that next action of integrity that will cast a vote towards that identity that I'm building for myself.
yeah. And I used to struggle that for a long time. It would be like, I can't believe I did this, and now I got to go and, I got to go back and do this, instead of saying, you know what, I chose as my new identity to go and do this and eat this food. Because, for the exception of a few people, I don't think people don't go without eating ice cream or pizza, or having something that they shouldn't have. But it's consistency. It's like, okay, my new identity is I eat 90%, I eat single ingredient foods, right? And then I work out 3 times a week, and it doesn't matter where I am, right? You and I have spoken about this numerous times. Like, we've traveled for work, and then it's like, we go get our coffee, and I'm like, Caroline, did you work out? Yeah, I worked out this morning. And like, it's just who you are as a person. And we want it all now, right? And so I go back to what I talked about before. It's like, start to build your habits. I didn't start by doing, 5 pull-ups. I started by, starting with a certain weight, doing certain exercises, and then consistently doing it 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, to the point where, you know what, I'm not testing myself. I need to get to the next level. And that new next level is I need to lift heavier. And so, you know, I look back now, and it's been 3 years of consistent, behavior, that I've gotten to this point. And then, you start to feel very proud of what you're doing, but yet there's still more that you can do, right? And it's always about getting to the next level. I always used to question, like, successful people like Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates. Why do they want to continue to grow and make more money? Early on in my career, I used to question myself, and it's not about making more money. It's about getting to that next level of goal that they have. And it's about, pushing yourself to get better and really reach your full potential. The one thing when I'm stuck that I always go back to, and Ed Millett says it perfect, is like, I come to the end of my life and I go and I meet the real version of who I could have really been and reached my full potential, and I'm not that person. And that's very painful for a lot of people, right? And so you got to live your authentic life too. I think a lot of people, they tell their story and their narrative on what other people want, and you got to really look in 100 years, unless you do something really, really, really bad or something really, really drastic, a lot of people are not going to remember you. And I know it sounds really sad, but live your life now. Take the action of what you want to do. If you want to start that podcast, do that. If you want to start that side hustle, do that. If you want to change your career, do that. And surround yourself with the people that are going to help support you around that. And sometimes it's really painful. As I said before, you're going to lose people, but you got to do the hard work. And it's the story that you tell yourself that really keeps you back, chained to your past, and creating the future on repeat, and not the future that you really want.
I want to build on something you just said. It's the people you surround yourself with. I personally believe your environment plays such an important role in this journey. And the people you surround yourself is a critical component of that environment. I know in the book Atomic Habits, we reference it a couple of times in our conversation. James Clear, my favorite book of all time, or one of my top two favorite books. He talks about, if I want to run a marathon, right? I can set the goal of I'm going to run a marathon, or I can think of I want to become a runner. One is framed as a goal, one is framed as an identity, which we talked about. But then he goes and talks about the environment and say, if I want to run a marathon or become a runner, and all my friends hang on after work and they go for pizza and beers, right? That is putting a barrier for me to become a runner. But if I surround myself by runners that are going to text me at 6 in the morning saying, let's go practice, let's go train, I'm more likely to stay consistent around those systems and those habits because I surround myself with people who are setting the standard. And I think in human nature, we always try to live up to the standards of our peer group. So if you surround yourself by people that are congruent with the identity that you're building, that is going to make it just so much easier for you to grow into that version of yourself.
100%. I think, that's the part where I said before that, as you go down this journey, if you decide to do this journey, and it's not easy, but it's rewarding, you're going to lose people. I've lost people along the way. I've lost family members that just don't understand how I think from a spiritual standpoint. Why do I not want to drink at a certain period of time? And I chose that, and it's okay. I have to live my authentic life. But then it's also been an opening welcome to a world of people that think similar to me and want to support the growth and so forth. I watched something the other day that Chris Williamson was talking to Alex Hormozi. He's like, everybody sees the top of the mountain, but no one wants to climb it. And so it's work. It's consistent work. And, we're quoting a lot of people, James Clear and so forth. But, it's about the infinite mindset. It's how do I get better every single day? And so it's stacking those habits. It's surrounding yourself and finding those like-minded people that want to go along that journey. And believe me, there's people out there, right, that want to push you and get to that next point. But, you touched on something that, earlier on in my self-development, it was all about pain and coming through my pain. Now it's more about purpose and what can I do to help out other people and how do I stay consistent around that. One of the reasons why I didn't write a book for a long time wasn't just the divinity of what I wanted to write. It was like I felt like I needed to get to a certain level of success. Like, who's going to listen to me? Who am I to write a book where people want me to coach them and help them? And so that was a self-limiting belief. That was a lie. It was a total lie, because then I would go and help people on a constant basis, and they'd be like, wow, like you're inspiring and motivating. Like you should be in sales. You should be a speaker, right? And then like it was all around me. But then, it really dawned on me, like it really hit me, right? And I'm very, very connected to God. And so for me, it's really about timing. A lot of good things are happening. I'm so grateful to have met you, and you and I share a lot of similar belief, and we have like crazy executive jobs, not in a bad way, but like our time, and I talk about time in the book. One of the things, and I'll talk about, I call the 4 and 24. Like I break my days down into 4 mini days, right? Because we try to fix everything right away. Like that's our culture now. We have so much information. It's all dopamine. I want it now. I don't want to go through the pain. I want to avoid that. I want to take the easy route out. I want to take this pill. It's going to help me. I want to take the shortcut. But like to me, fitness is the gateway drug. It's the superpower. Like it's the one thing that I feel you can't fast track. You might get successful in starting a business. You might get successful and move up your career because you had good opportunities. And not saying that those people didn't work hard, but like when it comes to your body and your fitness, you can't cheat your way out of that, right? Like that's constant work every single day of putting in the food, eating the right food, doing the things when you don't want to do it. And that's what separates. And when you can do that, that will give you so much confidence to do other things. And so, you know,
I
it's
always say there's so many correlations between fitness and life. Like a lot of lessons you can, like a lot of the things I believe in personal development have come from my fitness journey. A lot of the things that I apply in life, in problems, in situations, come from lessons I learned through going through that process. Because to your point, there are no shortcuts. There is no cheating the process. It's you need to go through that and build that consistency to see the results.
yeah. I still love James
Mm.
Clear, getting 1% better every single day, and how you can achieve that. And we use that in our company every single day, and I try to live by that. Like, and then taking the law of subtraction at the end of the day. Okay, so what did I do today to align with the identity that I have? What do I need to subtract out of that and move forward? But not out of punishment, out of like purpose, right? So how does this person act and think and feel? And so you know you asked me a question before. I think everybody has different chains, everybody has different experiences, but there are a lot of similarities of the story that we tell ourselves every single day. And it's a lie. It's 100% lie.
Awesome. So, Joey, before we wrap up, I want to do like a rapid fire, like
Okay.
questions, quick answer, just
Okay.
answer on the fly.
All right.
And we did not prepare this at all, so we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
First question: what is a word that you use to describe yourself?
Passionate.
What is a book that has changed your life?
Turning Pro by Stephen Pressfield. Amazing book. Talks about the amateur life and the professional life.
I need to add that one to my reading list because I haven't read it yet. So, okay, next one. What is a song that always lifts you up?
I would say Never Give Up by Sia. I use that a lot when I'm down. It's just like never to give up and just continue pushing forward and have that infinite mindset, and just the power of one more for me is so powerful.
What is a daily ritual that grounds you?
Journaling in the morning.
What is one thing you wish everyone know?
That I had a lot of setback, and I had misbelief, and I went through divorce and panic attacks, and people thought I had it all together and I didn't, and I had this mask on me. And until I really got really, really deep, that I was able to break some chains in my life to be the person that I am today. And I'm so grateful for what happened to me, because I feel you know things happen for us, not to us.
So true. That is one of the most fundamental, life changing mindset shifts when something happens to me versus something happens for me. I think the moment you're able to switch that perception of the world and what happens around you, that is one of the most powerful personal growth mindset shifts that there are.
Agreed.
Well, Joey, we've come to the end. As always, I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Now, before we go, how can people connect with you? When is your book going to be available? How can people get a call about it?
Yeah, so it's in the final stages right now. Book should be ready sometime in the fall. People can connect with me on LinkedIn. Can also connect with me on Instagram at the dot Joey Walters. It's the best way to connect with me. Look forward to giving out my book and starting my transformational program, and look forward to continuing to work with you. And so, yeah, this would love to help out anybody. Really focusing on helping executives, professional athletes. That's who I really focus on, reaching their full potential and recreating the story in their identity.
Well, thank you so much, Joey. Again, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you here next week for another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. Okay, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But before you go, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if we're not already friends on Instagram, let's get connected. You can find me as Leading Yourself Podcast. Number 2, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am incredibly grateful that you're in this journey with me. I want to leave you with one last thought. I want to remind you that you're destined for more, and that every step that you take brings you closer to becoming that best version of yourself. Embrace each day as a chance to learn, grow, and chase your dreams. The world needs you to shine brightly, so go out and show up fully and authentically. Take care, and I'll see you next time.